All right, what I want to do is, you've seen a couple of the 10 and 2 videos. I'm going to ask Mark Burnett those same 10 questions. Number one, how would you describe who am I?
My name, Mark Burnett.
How would you describe what you do? So in terms of if somebody said, if they didn't know who you were and they said, okay, what do you do? What would be the first most important thing?
My entire job is creating emotional connections through screens, be it film or television or internet screens. I create emotional connections.
And then what's my impact?
That's not for me to judge. That needs to be judged by other people.
Then what do I want to be remembered for?
Being available to my kids.
Of all the experiences you've had in business, what's the number one lesson you'd pass on to people in this room?
Take full responsibility for your success and, equally importantly, your failures. I don't like people who don't take responsibility.
What's my favorite quote?
Biblical or business?
Let's take one of each.
The business one has to be, oh, I know, because you just mentioned him. Okay, it's easy to spot a loser. A loser is the guy with a for sale sign on a dirty car. Donald Trump.
Right.
He's not the guy with the dirty car. He said that. And
the biblical.
Let's think about biblical. Probably Romans 5. Suffering creates perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope.
Great. What's my passion?
My passion beyond my job, my family, is jungles, mountains, and deserts. I love the outdoors.
And then what does success mean to me?
It changes every decade what that means to me. Right now, it means making sure that as we've stuck our necks out and walked the walk on the Bible and on the movie Son of God, that we reach the maximum number of people possible through our skill set of emotionally connecting stories and allow the most number of people to be affected, impacted, walk with Christ and get others to walk with them.
Last of the 10 questions. Why am I a Christian?
Because I really like the feeling of the Holy Spirit inside me.
So that was one of the 10 and 2 videos that we do. There's about a dozen of those videos on our website if you'd like to look at some more of them. The website is entrepreneurialleaders.com. I want to remind you of a few things before we have Les come up. First thing is that most of you should have received this magazine when you came in. As I mentioned earlier, at the back of the magazine, there's a couple of pages where you can write down notes. So you may want to hold on to that magazine. Secondly, this book is piled at the back of the room. Everyone who's here can get a free copy of this book. It's been included in the registrations. This is a book worth $20. It's been included for everyone in the registration, so just pick it up when you exit. Lastly, there should be response forms that will be put at your table quite soon. These one-page forms, we'd like you to fill them out after Les finishes his presentation. We'll be doing a short Q&A. So what will happen is Les will speak for approximately 45 minutes. Then after that, we'll have about a 5-minute Q&A. The questions can be sent by text. The number will be put on the screen. So after Les finishes, we'll do that Q&A based on the questions that are texted to us. And at the same time, we'd like you to fill out this response form. So after you fill out that form, we'll have a number of volunteers who will quickly collect those forms, we'll bring them to the front, and then we'll do the door prize draw. As I mentioned earlier, the door prize is that car back there. So somebody's laughing. So you get the car. That's the good news. Bad news is you get it for 24 hours. So that obviously has a fair bit of value. So we'll pick a winner, and then you'll get to use that car for 24 hours, courtesy of our friend Glenn Bueller, and he'll be coming up with Matthias Gosen to do the draw. All right, so next I'd like to introduce Les, and our guest speaker, Les Hewitt, is known as the Focus Coach by his peers and clients. He is the founder of the Power of Focus Coaching Program, a unique focusing system for business leaders who want greater profits, less stress, and more time off. Is there anybody like that here? Anybody want more time off? I'd like to ask, how many of you have heard of his book, The Power of Focus? Can I just see? Okay, so there's a handful of you. So that book has sold over 1 million copies and is quite well known. Les has worked with more than 300 companies in Canada, the US, Singapore, Bahrain, Dubai, Russia, Australia, the UK, and the Republic of Ireland. As I mentioned, he wrote The Power of Focus. There are currently 6 books in that series with more than 1 million copies sold and available in 21 languages. Les is the founder of the Kids Ed Project, a unique curriculum designed to help thousands of underprivileged kids learn and implement the 5 fundamentals for creating a happy, healthy life. Today, Les is here to share some thoughts on the importance of innovation, focus, and resourcefulness for business leaders. So please help me welcome Les Hewitt.
Thank you. I thought I'd start this evening with a real blockbuster of a story because it's getting late in the evening. So I was in this store, a long lineup, and finally I got up to the head of the queue, and a young man was behind the cash desk, and I handed my 2 videos that I was renting for the weekend. At that time, Blockbuster was closing stores right, left, and center. And I said to this young man, a lot of stores closing, what does that look like for your career? And with a lot of enthusiasm, he answered back, yes, that's true, but this store is not closing. Look at the lineups. This is the busiest store in Calgary, and it will not be closing. How naive. 1 month later, that store closed. And sadly for that young man, I don't know what message he was fed from people at the top, but he didn't see something coming fast called innovation. Innovation in the form of Netflix, in the form of pay-per-view, and a host of other ones that are absolutely changing the landscape of how we view our entertainment. Any Netflix bingers here tonight? Watch a whole season in one day. No commercials. And that's the beauty of innovation. And what I want to do in the very short time that I've got here tonight is just share a few thoughts that I've learned from my clients, from my peers, from my own personal experiences, and just touching on these things. And I want to try to add as much value as I can in the next 45 minutes. And I'd encourage you, if you get one idea, make sure that you capture it, have a notepad or something ready to go. But, you know, innovation is not new, as we can see. I just read this story last week. Can we get the slides up, please? Oh, not that one. Can we go back one? Yeah, I just read this guy's story. I don't know if you've ever heard of Sir Frank Whittle. I hadn't. And Sir Frank, going back into the mid-30s, was a guy who had an idea. And his idea was that he thought he could transform the airliner industry and create a jet engine that had never been done before. And so he worked toilessly at this, and then, of course, World War II broke out. And what was interesting was nobody paid attention to his idea. In fact, some people said he was stupid. Would never work. Turbojet, that'll never work. It's never worked before, on and on and on. But of course, being an innovator, he just kept going because he's a visionary, he's driven, he doesn't pay any attention to the naysayers out there. And what was probably, in retrospect, one of the worst things at that time in the early 40s was the fact that the British Air Ministry poo-pooed his idea and said it will never work. Well, this was the first plane that took off. You can see that big thing in the back tail there. It doesn't look like what it looks today, but this was the first jet plane that took off, a Gloster E-2839. And then in 1942, he produced the jets that powered this plane. 15,000 feet back then was incredible, and 690 miles per hour had never been done before. Rolls-Royce went on to take over a lot of that business. But again, our innovators just seem to get lost and left behind sometimes. Many of them quit. And by the way, he never even bothered to take a patent out on his special turbojet engine. Historians looking back in this, the story I read about it was that that engine could have prevented the Battle of Britain and probably saved hundreds of thousands of lives if somebody had listened and just woke up. And I'm sure there's many more stories like that. But innovation is wonderful, and I just wanted to see, you know, are you sitting on a big idea? I mean, this is a room of really sophisticated people. If we could hear all your stories, I'm sure they would be amazing. But are you sitting on some big idea that you've been wondering about and thinking maybe this would work? Should I get moving on it? And I would say in a room full of entrepreneurs like this, somebody's bound to be sitting on some big idea. But when we look at some of the more up-to-date versions of innovators, what's the emblem here? Tesla. And of course, Mr. Elon Musk. You got to think this guy's a genius. I read last week that Tesla was now valued more than General Motors. And General Motors pulled in $660 million in profit last year. Tesla hasn't got close to making a profit. I had one of my clients that I coach in BC. He bought the very first Tesla sports car a few years ago. And he thought, maybe I should buy some stock. He bought the stock at $24. Last week, it was going at $333 or something like that. Why does it work with some people? And why does somebody like Mr. Musk attract all those young engineers? Well, the reason is a lot of them are just bored working for big corporations that don't value what they're doing. And somebody comes along who's got some exciting, unbelievable challenge that could change the world. It could also crash. And they love the challenge. And they'll work crazy hours just to see if they can pull this thing off. And of course, he's got all that charisma and everything else. And anybody driven a Tesla? I had the privilege of doing that. My son got me a ride in one in California when I was visiting him, and I got the gull wing one. Very impressed. These things are fast, by the way. I heard one of the newer cars, just seeing the Ferrari at the back, apparently one of the newer cars, 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. Can you imagine somebody coming along in a nice four-door, pulling up to the traffic light, spouse sitting in the front seat, baby carriage thing in the back, right? And the Ferrari pulls up beside him, like that red one, at the lights. And the guy in the Tesla with the baby in the back and all burns the Ferrari. Interesting. But innovators are the leaders of the future and the transformers of the future. And, you know, going on from there, Mr. Musk just doesn't bother with cars. He's got this whole thing called SpaceX. never built a rocket in his life, blew up a ton of them before he ever got one to fly. And of course, everybody's telling me this will never work. What do you know about rockets? That'll never work. And now he's got the contract to take private rockets up to the space station, which is going to be very, very profitable. And the biggest rocket ever built is under his wing. So it's interesting, transforming the landscape. And of course, this is interesting. The biggest factory ever built, Tesla's Giga Battery Factory, says it'll have annual battery production for 500,000 Teslas by the year 2020. And all that will be powered by renewable energy. Is that going to make a difference? Wow. So again, I'm going to ask you, are you sitting on a big idea? And really what I'll challenge you with is, should you be playing a bigger game? I know I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs. I've been an entrepreneur for 34 years myself. And I enjoy coaching entrepreneurs and training their organizations and so on. But I know some things can happen that don't work out. Sometimes we get exhausted. We get overwhelmed. We don't get the right team on board. We get frustrated. Stuff happens. And it's really difficult. Sometimes we might feel betrayed. I remember I was running my first training business, a seminar company called Achievers Canada, back in the early 80s. And it was very successful. I ran it for 12 years, and I thought, okay, I've done enough of this, 450 events similar to this. I want to do something else. And I attempted to sell the company to somebody I knew, and I confided in, told him far too much information, very naive of me. And a month later, he was down the street copying my program and going in complete competition. Stuff happens, you know? So what do? I want to share some practical things about innovation and, you know, what are some of the simple fundamental things that you can do to help you innovate? One of the best things I ever did was basically create what I call a mastermind group. And I started this little group. There were 5 of us, and I just handpicked 5 people. We were all entrepreneurs. We were all in different companies. And we decided we would meet about once a month. We'd have breakfast. We'd spend a couple of hours together, and we'd brainstorm. We'd share ideas, and it was all confidential. And I met with that group last week. And we've been running that group for 32 years. There's only 3 of the original 5, including myself, left. 2 of the other guys sadly passed away in their 50s. And, but last week, just 32 years later, here we are talking about different things today. We're talking about business still. We're all still in business. Over those 32 years, we've talked about every subject under the sun, and not just business. If you've ever felt that you're struggling and you need help and you've no one to turn to, because I know in leadership and an entrepreneur situation, sometimes you feel lonely. I hear that a lot from my clients. Who can I turn to? Who can I talk to? And if you don't have a support group, like a simple mastermind group as we call it, I'd encourage you to check that out. And you know, it could be a men and women, it could be all women, it could be all men, it's entirely up to you. But pick people that are like-minded, people that are ambitious, people who are positive thinkers, people who are doing well, but they've also got the challenges of life. We've talked about everything from one guy having his daughter bulimic at the age of 16, serious situations. Another guy's marriage broke up. He was in counseling for a year. We got his marriage back again. I mean, it's just, for men particularly, I think women are a lot better than this at doing this. They have their own networks, but men just seem to not reach out. And I would say 5's a great number. You don't want too many people. But if that resonates with you, check it out. Maybe that's something that you would like to do. Another thing, you know, is getting clarity and getting ideas and looking what's coming down the road. Is something coming down the road in your industry that maybe you're not aware of? And how do you find out? Do you take the time? One of my great mentors when I was just starting out gave me this tip. He said, Les, read 30 minutes a day. Read something substantial, something that will either encourage you or inspire you, or you'll learn about your industry, or something that's going to be helpful in your business. 30 minutes a day. He said to me, miss a meal, but don't miss your 30 minutes. And I realize these things are very fundamental that I'm talking about, but I can tell you very sincerely that that changed my life. I didn't read very much. And he said, read inspiring autobiographies. This is a fantastic. You want to know about Elon Musk and the struggles, no money, and all the things he had to do to keep Tesla going? Phenomenal book. And there's more than one book written. This was by Ashley Vance. I would recommend that one. He's the author, Ashley Vance. And it's just called Elon Musk. And there's lots of them out there. Another great one I read was James Dyson, who was the guy that created the vacuum cleaners. And you see, you dry your hands in 10 seconds when you go into the airport washrooms, and his stuff is just unbelievable. Again, he's attracting hundreds and hundreds of engineers because of the excitement and the challenges that he's putting forward. Are you reading 30 minutes? Is it a habit? I've learned that routines and habits are an essential part of moving forward as an entrepreneur. A lot of the clients I find, and I struggled with this a lot myself, was I'm scattered, I'm all over the place. You know, so a mastermind group, reading 30 minutes a day, capturing your best ideas. I find people are just all over the place. They're running, multitasking. By the way, multitasking doesn't work. All the research is in. So Jim Rohn, some of you may have heard of Jim Rohn, but he was my first mentor. I never had a mentor in my life, and this was a lot of years ago. And he said, Les, if you ever get a good idea, capture it. And he said, carry a book around with you. I know technology's there. You can do it in all sorts of technology. But he just likes to keep it simple. He says, carry a nice book around, like pay $25 for a good ideas book, so you know that it's quality. And I'll read it. I'm writing another book, so I was looking for quotes, and there's a couple of things that. A sudden flash of awareness is the lightning bolt that can turn your life around forever. That's how important awareness is. I was told awareness is the first step to progress. If you're stuck, awareness is critical. And just one flash can change your life. Here's another one. A still mind uncovers more genius than one constantly spinning with ideas. My son wrote that. I'm impressed. The wonderful thing about truth is that once we know it, we can't ever fool ourselves into thinking we do not know it. That's profound. That was Terry Mulliner, who wrote a book called Agreement Nations. And this is powerful. You've got to discern the root of resistance before you commit to the path of persistence. Just flashes. If I didn't capture those, I'd never remember them. They wouldn't be important. Mr. Rohn told me, he said, keep ideas book. You probably won't use all the ideas, but imagine having 25 years of ideas. Do you think those would be more valuable to pass on to your kids at the end of the day than your furniture? Worth thinking about? Okay, let's talk about focus. The power of focus. What is focus? To me, focus, as far as an entrepreneur goes, is the ability to create exciting new goals and achieve them and put up with all the distractions and things that are going to get in the way, all the obstacles and hurdles that you got to jump through before you actually hit whatever that big target is. And it's very interesting to see. Can I brag about my son for a couple of minutes? This is my son, Andrew, 6 years old. And anybody got kids? Hands up. What I've learned is that kids, especially this age, are some of the best focusers in the world. You know, when they want something, they want it. Can you relate? Well, let me give you a quick example of this. Here's Andrew come along. He's about 6 years old. He runs into the house on a Friday night, and he said, Dad, my friend Josh has invited me over for a sleepover tonight. Can I go over to his house? We're going to play. It's going to be fun. I said, sure, go. And so he comes roaring into the house on Saturday morning. Dad, guess what Josh has in his house? I said, what? He said, a hamster. I said, a hamster? He said, yeah, but Dad, you want to see it? It's a little white ball of fluff, and I want one. Guess when he wanted it? 3 weeks down the road? Today. And, oh, what's happening with these slides? There you go. Can you pull me back one? Jeez. Anybody had one of these? So here's the deal. I said, Andrew, here's the deal. Saturday morning, I'm going to be out most of the day. I know your mom's really tired. I think what the best thing we can do is talk about this at family council, Sunday dinner. We had this family council every week, Sunday dinner, talk about what's going on, what's happening, who needs what, and so on. And he turned around to me and said, Dad, the pet store closes at 5. I'm out of there, right? So I get back. I hear a story from my wife. I come back, and she tells me the story. He's on the phone all day, phoning pet stores. His buddies are saying, we got a hockey game going. Can't play today. I'm getting a hamster. Come on over and play. We got a great new video game. Can't play today. I'm getting a hamster. Focused. Laser focused. And the story goes that he phoned about 4 pet stores, and the last one he phoned said, oh, you're looking for a hamster, son? The white ones? Yeah, we have those white ones. And by the way, if you buy the cage, the hamster's free. What do you think that did to his motivation? Wow! So I come home late that evening. Guess what we have in our house? A hamster. I said to my wife, friend, I thought we talked about this. We're big discussion tomorrow night. You weren't here. I'm getting bulletins on hamsters all day long. And at 3:30, she caved in. And she said, okay, well, go take a look. Take a look. Game over. It's a sentence he's waiting for all day. Could have swallowed a banana sideways when he heard that. Kids don't quit. I came home. I was home later in that evening. Had this big discussion. The hamster's there. My wife, my daughter Jennifer, 3 years older, she comes in, looks at the hamsters flying around in the cage. What's this? It's a hamster. Whose is it? Andrew's. I want one. 3 days later, we had 2 hamsters. 3 months later, we had 22 hamsters. Nobody told us how to check. They're ripping up the baseboards and the carpets. And kids don't quit. Can you imagine in a business setting, going in on a Monday morning meeting, management meeting, some bright spark says, I think we could do with a hamster in the office. And the general manager says, oh, well, John, I mean, that's a really big decision. I think we'd have to have several meetings before we could come to a conclusion about that. Does that ring any bells? Innovators get on with it. But focus is important. There's, here he is again. He's about 14 years old now. I don't read books, and I'm not interested in computers. We had to have some conversations about that. Have you any kids that just sort of don't care about stuff like that? And we were saying, computers? You've got to know about computers. I may not know about it, but you've got to know about technology. It's the future. You can't go anywhere without it. No, I'm not interested. Reading books? I'm not interested in books. By the way, here's a tip, and this worked finally. Bribe your kids to read. I'm serious. I had a great friend, Charlie Tremendous Jones. He had 6 kids. He bribed every one of his kids to read great books. Can you imagine if you could get your kids to read 6 of the best books ever written? That would teach them something about life or business or whatever it was. So I went out and I bought this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Some of you probably read that. And I said, here's the deal, Andrew. You're coming up to 15 years old. I'm going to pay you $20 if you read this book and give me a written book report. Just 2 or 3 pages, that's all I want. And back then, 20 bucks it'd probably be 50 bucks today. But 20 bucks. So I give him a couple of weeks. I go back. How's the book coming along? Page 10. I said, Andrew, 20 bucks. And here's the interesting thing. You never know what happens. Something caught fire with him in that book. I have no idea what it was. He powered through that book. And from then on, he got fascinated by books. He took a speed reading course, powered through university, got excited about learning, got excited about what that can do for you, the knowledge, the wisdom, and so on, at a very young age. And today, he was in Rome 10 days ago, invited to a special collaboration of 50 of the top thought leaders in the world. And this is my grown-up son having a long conversation with the president of the United Nations. And this is the kid that said, I'm not interested in computers and I don't want to read. And I'm very proud of that young man today. And by the way, he's at the forefront of a movement called the for-benefit economy. And innovation is happening all over the world. And if you want to find out more about that, I had some conversations with people earlier here. And what's the new trends that are coming in business? Most of you, if not all of you, know about the Fortune 500 list, right? The 500 most profitable organizations in America, right? It's been around for ages. But it's all based on money, profits. Nothing wrong with that. But I'll tell you, the new generation, the socially conscious generation, many of them millennials, money's not the driver. They're genuinely concerned about making their life good for the planet, for the people they work with, for the culture they bring into companies if they're going to be entrepreneurs, and many of them are. It's phenomenal. And if you want to see like 50 of the best for-benefit organizations, some of them in Canada, this is around the world, he put together a list of 500 companies he calls the Game Changers 500. And you'll learn lots about what those companies are doing, how their cultures are changing, how they attract people, how they're giving back. And because they're socially conscious, they're actually becoming more profitable than the old-style corporations. Fascinating reading. If you want a link for that, go to gamechangers.co. Gamechangers.co, not .com, .co. And it's about 50 companies listed there. Fascinating reading. Van City is one of them. There's a couple of other Canadian ones. But this is what's coming. And if you're doing it the old way, you're going to be in trouble trying to attract, especially these young people. They're on a different plane altogether, and it's wonderful. And this guy's teaching me. It's wonderful to be mentored by your son, and we finally figured that out how we can make that work. But let's just talk about focus for a moment. Let me give you a couple of things that I've seen with our clients that just really seem to be struggling all the time. And these are basic fundamentals, not getting into high-tech or real strategic analysis or anything like that. Simple things. One of them is, what I've learned is, one of the worst things you can do is to plan your day. And some of you are probably going, what did he say? Seriously, one of the worst things you can do is plan your day, because what I see is the people that have these big to-do lists, and I'm talking about the leaders and often the entrepreneurs, they have these massive to-do lists, and they jump in every day with this big list. And, of course, they get distracted and interrupted and everything else. They don't get their list finished, right? So what do they do at the end of the day? Whatever's not done, they roll it into the next day. But they've already got a to-do list for the next day, and they play this rollover game right through the week. And then what happens? Well, I got to take the work home. And, the ball game I promised my son I was going to, well, we got to cancel that this week. I just got too much work. Anybody playing that game? It's common. It's a struggle, and the guilt, particularly with men, piling all this work, now overwhelmed by work. So let me give you a tip that I've seen made a big difference. Instead of planning your day, design your week. There's a massive difference to that. So let me give you a very quick example. Beginning of the week, what I did with my team, we'd get together first thing Monday morning, and I give everybody 30 minutes to design the week. What are the most important things that you need to complete this week? In fact, we just had a top 3. Everybody had a top 3. The 3 most important things that must be completed this week, end of day Friday. We had a little 15-minute meeting in the morning. We had a whiteboard. We actually wrote those things up, 3 each, including me. Accountability. Friday afternoon, we had another quick little 15-minute meeting. And check marks. Yep, got it done. You got 3 out of 3. High fives, great job, well done. If you didn't get 3 out of 3, well, let's have a conversation about it. What happened? What got in the way? We don't always get 3 out of 3. Some weeks I get 0 out of 3. Something happened, something crashed. A new opportunity possibly that was genuine. I'll tell you, just doing that, and by the way, those weekly little mini targets are lined and aligned with whatever your quarterlies are and so on. Whatever role you're in, let me ask you just a basic question. Do you know the 3 best things that you do in your business, that drive the business, that are your talents, your strengths? If I was to say to you, give me your top 3. Could you answer that in 20 seconds? Yeah, here we go. Boom, boom, boom. See, the truth is, if you can't, you're not focused. You can tell me stories all day long, but you're not focused. You don't know the top 3 things you do best that drive your part of the business, whatever that role is? No, it's not hard to change that. And things change. For me right now, it's coaching business owners, speaking and training, and creating products. That's my top 3. And those are my sweet spot. When I'm working, my energy's high when I'm doing those things. Is your energy high, the things you do? By the way, the top 3 things, the current level of focus I find is about 15 to 35% focus that leaders in business across the board, across industry, they're only spending 15 to 35% of their week on the things they do best. You need to be at 75, 80%. Because you're going to feel better, you're going to be more confident, because you're doing the things that you're really good at that give you energy. When I'm writing, when I'm creating, the energy flows. If I'm stuck with paperwork and buried under it, not a happy day, not a happy week. The good news is you can change that. We don't have time to go into all the details on how to do that, but I just want to throw these things out at you to see what you're... If that's true for you, change it. So, focus on what you do best, let go of the rest. And then, do you schedule focus time? When you figure out what the 3 most important things that you need to get done this week, how do you make sure that happens? It's called focus time. You get it on your calendar and you say, okay, that's going to take 2 hours. Focus time means you concentrate 100% on the one thing that is so important that week. And what I find is with my clients, that only means 4 or 5 times a week where you have blocks of real focus time. This is 100% concentration. One thing only, no distractions, no interruptions, communicate to your people, I'm on focus time. Leave the office if you need to, if that works. Your productivity will go up. You won't believe it. Your energy will go up. Just simple things. Simple, simple things. By the way, another thing to help you concentrate, this made a radical difference to me when I'm writing books. Play Baroque music in the background. Some of you know about that. There's concentration music. There's new levels of it now, but Baroque classical music is 60 beats a minute. If your resting heart rate is around 60 beats a minute, you're in alignment, and you will find yourself more efficient, more focused, and you will get more done in less time, guaranteed, just by doing that. So little things make big difference. Here's a guy you probably know. Bill Gates, big guy at Microsoft, right? And here's another one, the Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett. Two of the most successful entrepreneurs and business people in the world. And what's interesting, they've been good buddies for 25 years. Miles apart. One's a tech genius and the other guy doesn't really want to know much about tech. He's very old school. But together, they're incredible focus partners. 25 years, and now they're doing things to help the world with their foundations and everything else. And by the way, there's an interesting documentary just come out with Warren Buffett. You should check this out. It's called Becoming Warren Buffett, 2017. Just go on YouTube. You'll find the whole documentary film is on YouTube. Becoming Warren Buffett, 2017. And it's a fascinating story. And what's interesting, about halfway through the documentary, he's talking about his relationship with Bill Gates. And they were both on an interview panel at some conference, and they were asked this question at the same time. And the question was, what is the single most important factor that causes you to be successful in business? And what was interesting, they both answered simultaneously to that question, and there was only one word to the answer. You know what the word was? Focus. Above everything else, it's all about focus. And, you know, my work I've been doing over the years, the challenges that go on with distractions and interruptions and everything not working is amazing. Just making any sense? And see, the other thing about this is, could you be playing a bigger game if you had more time, weren't frantic all the time, feeling overwhelmed sometimes, fatigued? But could you? Is it possible you could be playing a bigger game? These guys are playing the biggest games on the planet. And you don't need to be a Warren Buffett or a Bill Gates. You can do some very simple things that stretches you, that maybe for you it's getting your energy back. Maybe you've lost the juice a little bit. That's happened to me several times. And to get up and running again and have some support behind you, like a mastermind group, and maybe that big idea that's been lodged in your head, how do you know that's not God whispering? I had a whisper a year and a half ago. And I'm no scholar on the Bible or anything. I'm an amateur, but I really do believe that the Holy Spirit resides within us. And I can only talk about me. I felt this nudge about a year and a half ago. Hey, you've been doing this thing for 32 years. Maybe you need to give back in some sort of a bigger way. That stuck with me for over a year. And I know when it sticks, to me, there's some divine prompting going on, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And so finally it hit me, maybe I should be giving back to kids that have never had a chance for a good education. I'm an only child. I was brought up in Northern Ireland, in Belfast. My mom and dad scraped a lot to get me into a decent school, and I didn't know this for years and years afterwards. They didn't have much money. They got me into a good school. I did pretty well because of that education, and I realize today how many people have no chance of an education. So the prompting I got was, hey, you've learned all this stuff. Why don't you teach kids some of these fundamental things that help you in life and create a curriculum that they can understand? And I'm actually doing that by playing soccer with kids, immigrant families, First Nations youth. We've got some things going to be happening in Rwanda. And it's just re-energized me. And you see, I still get, God's good. I get to do the things I like. And I get to do the things I'm good at, things that I've practiced, that I enjoy, that give me energy. And this isn't about me. I'm just challenging you. Should you be playing a bigger game? Could you be playing a bigger game? Is it possible? Are you being nudged? Gently maybe at first, and maybe not so gently? Okay. Get the slides back, please. Can we just finish up a couple of minutes on resourcefulness? One of the biggest stories, you probably heard about it, was all over the world. The 33 miners who were trapped in the mine in Chile. 33 men, 2,300 feet, 69 days, a record being buried. And nobody thought they had a chance. The whole mountain collapsed by being overused. And of course, all the TV cameras were all over the world. And days went by. I think it was, I don't know how many days before they even got in contact with them. But it's a phenomenal story about resourcefulness. The families wouldn't give up. They set up a camp, particularly the wives. Faith played a huge part in this. There were hymns, there were prayers, there were all over the world going on. And resourcefulness kicked in because people said, there's got to be a way to get these people out. And they brought in the drills, and the first ones didn't work, and then they finally broke through. And they finally broke through, but hey, how are we getting them out of there? There's no way we can get them out. So they had to dig this shaft, and then they dropped in here's some of the guys. They hauled them up in this special little cage that was built, and it was an emotional, amazing scene when those people got rescued, all 33. And if you don't think God's hands in that, I don't know. Resourcefulness plus faith creates a miracle. And by the way, back to reading for a second. This is the book that was written years afterwards by a Pulitzer Prize-winning author. His name is Hector Tobar. It's a great book. It's called Deep Down Dark. I would encourage you to read that book. It's inspiring. It's all about resourcefulness, the spirit that people have, never quitting, never giving up, and other people not giving up on them as well. And it wasn't all pretty, but the leadership that took part 2,300 feet below the surface was phenomenal. And the people that wanted to quit, that thought they were going to die, were brought up again, a lot by faith, a lot of prayer. Amazing. So, should you play a bigger game? Could you play a bigger game? Maybe the question is, will you play a bigger game? I'll leave this with you. I interviewed him. I'm writing a new book. We're going to raise some money to help these kids. And I interviewed this guy called Ken Starr, who's a consultant in California. He's 72 years old. And I was saying, so 72, like, you don't have the energy today. He says, no, he said, and it was sliding. But he said, a guy taught me something. He drew like a bell curve, and he said, here's typically what happens in people's lives. And he grew from 0 up to 65, traditionally 65, retire, and so on. And the curve for most people just drops off in activity. And this guy challenged him. He said, what if, now that you're 72, how long do you think you're going to live? He said, I'm going to be in my early 90s. He said, well, why don't you take that next 20 years and push the curve straight up and make the last 20 the best 20 you've ever had? He said, that inspired me. I never even thought of it like that. He's off doing all sorts of great work. So again, will you play a bigger game? Thanks for your attention. I really appreciate it.
Oops, I just want to wait there. So let's all just wait here for a few minutes as I explain what we'll do quickly with the response forms. So as I mentioned, Les will handle some questions in a few minutes. The number to text me should be on the screen shortly. It's 778-628-5131, and it'll come up shortly. So there's response forms. If you can just do this, it'll just take a couple of minutes. There's response forms at the middle of each table. If you can each grab one of those, there's pens And the pens, in fact, are these special ELO pens that you can take with you as a souvenir. So if you can use those pens, fill out the response form. It just talks about the event, the various individuals, and also an opportunity to give a response. So if you can do that in a couple of minutes right now, we'll have some volunteers come by very quickly, collect those forms, and then we'll do a draw. So while that's happening, we'll have a few questions for Les. And as I mentioned, just text them to the number right there. So the first question, this is a bit of a complicated one maybe. What's the best way to inspire innovation when human and financial resources are very limited and the cost of failure is high? And all for $9.99. Should I reread that?
No,
Okay.
I think this happens a lot. I think people get ideas. I mean, it's all risk reward, isn't it, when you go to do something different? I think, a quick answer to that is persuade somebody to buy into your dream who's got the money. No, I'm serious. If your dream's so strong and powerful, you're so excited about it, then create a great presentation, a compelling story about how it's going to work. Of course you need some sort of a business plan, obviously, but that happens all the time. And if you're really good, and practice your presentation. Don't go into the big dog at the very first and you haven't practiced or done anything. Work on the small numbers first before you go to the big dogs. I'm doing that myself actually at the moment. So,
okay. What was the name of the book your son was inspired by?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Rich Dad, and is that David Chilton?
No.
Or no, that. Well, in any event, if you Google Rich Dad,
the Japanese
Poor Dad,
guy. There's a whole series of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It was the original book.
Right. All right. So you've written a book, The Power of Focus. What do you see as the 2 or 3 most important ways in which you yourself get focused?
One of the ones more recently, I think a lot of the old traditional goal setting doesn't work. Doesn't work for a lot of people. You go into any sales company with 30 sales guys in real estate, insurance, whatever, and they try to get motivated by their manager and so on, and after a while, people just tune out. And so I think the best way is to create a picture of the future that's really important to you, that you get excited about. It's not about the company so much, it's about what do you want to see happen in the next 3 to 5 years. And I mentioned that briefly. What we do is we create this sophisticated slideshow with very powerful statements attached to the photos and the images. And that can include your family, your health and fitness, your financials, your spiritual life, your career, your business, whatever. You can put any category you want in there. And then layer some really inspirational music over that. The ones I do are typically anywhere from 5 minutes to 9 minutes for my clients. But once you can see that picture and believe it and get excited about it, without getting into details about visualization, it's just one little piece of the puzzle, but it's a very powerful one. All elite athletes, even our hockey players, they all use visualization techniques. But that keeps you focused. I watch that every day. The first thing I do in the morning is watch my movie. We call it a movie. Watch my life movie. It takes me 8 minutes. First thing in the morning, every morning. What do you think happens to my subconscious? In about 30 days, it's locked in. It's powerful.
All right, we've got a few more questions. If I can ask the volunteers to start coming forward, collect all the response forms, and then once you've got those response forms, bring them to the front and pop them in here, and then we'll do the draw quickly. So we'll be done in about 3 minutes. So if you can get somebody at your table to sort of collect the response forms, get them in one batch, and then all the volunteers will pick them up. So another question, how does your faith impact your approach to business endeavors?
Good question. I think, how does my faith align with my business endeavors? To me, the simplicity of it is every day have one thought in your head, add value. So have a mindset of constantly adding value and doing it with integrity. And I always ask for guidance every morning. I have a little routine I do. I go out in the morning. I go a brisk walk for about 35 minutes. That's my connection with God time, just having a chat. It's nothing over sophisticated, but I ask God for guidance, for direction for this day, and help me add value to everybody I come into contact with.
Great. And another question is, what lesson have you learned from your biggest failure?
Yeah, I've had more than one, like most of us. But again, I've got to go back to one of my old mentors again. When I was at a real crossroads in my career, didn't like the career I was in, needed to make a change, and was desperate. And he said to me, "You've had a setback. It's not the end of the world. There's always 10 options." That changed my life. To have a mindset, no matter what happens, there's always 10 options. And he took the practical side of it. He said, "I want you to go home tonight. Take a notepad. I want you to write 10 options to this situation that you're in right now, and don't stop until you've got 10. And I think it was number 8 popped, and it was about starting my own business and starting my own training company.
Great.
I got so excited about that, and again, I think that was God-directed. I couldn't stop writing for 2.5 hours. And my wife come down in the middle of the night saying, "What are you doing in the basement?" I said, "I just had a great idea." You've always got 10 options. If you can accept that, and also with your team, bring them together and say, we've got 10 options, let's start working on it.
Great. All right, can we thank Les?
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
And can I say one thing?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
One little thing. I'll stick around as long as you want me to. If you want me to ask me any questions or anything. My 30-second little promo is, if anybody's really a business owner here tonight and you feel that you could use a coach, I'd be happy to talk to you a little bit about, I coach people for at least a year, one-on-one. It's with me, nobody else. If that appeals to you, just give me a business card or something before you leave. And I've had people ask me about books. I don't carry truckloads of books around anymore. But one of the things I did do with my son challenging me to get into the digital age, you can't see this away at the back, but I'm holding up what looks like a credit card. And actually it's a USB, and you can plug it into your computer. You can download it onto anything you want. And there's 19 hours of Power of Focus material on this, including the entire latest Power of Focus book, the 10th anniversary edition. And I recorded the entire book from cover to cover. There's also an audio about how to create your own mastermind group and do it successfully. And I've interviewed 7 top experts in the personal and professional development field. All the interviews are on that. And there's also a half-day live workshop that I've done with the Power of Focus, and it's all on this little card. And I brought some of those with me if you want to talk to me at table number or whatever it is down there.
Yeah, so there's no rush to leave. Les will be at the back and you can get all that from him.
And if you just want to talk and ask questions, that's great. I love it.
Great. Thank you, Les.
My pleasure.
All right. We'll hand it over to do the draw. Yeah.
Is this all right, guys? All right. Well, yeah, what a great night. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm very excited to put somebody behind the wheel of the Ferrari, or maybe if that's not quite your thing, we've got 7 other cars as well. So let's just get on with the draw here. All right. This one does not have a name on it, so I'm sorry, whomever. Put your name on it. Oh boy, no name. This could be a long night. All right, we have one. Paul Craker from C2C Network. Come on up, Paul.
right, just okay, just hand it to him, and that's it. All right. There's no need for a speech. Thank you. Have a seat. I thought we were in for another 45-minute presentation. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Well, I'd like to thank Matthias Gosa, number 61, and Glenn Bueller from the Executive Car Club. And thank you all for coming. And I think I hope all of you have enjoyed it. And have a good evening. If you want to hang around, there's no rush to leave. Otherwise, have a good night. Thanks.